Today we're on Fifth Avenue in New York City inside a 1927 former hotel that textile designer Lisa Fine has transformed into a richly layered hideaway. Inspired by India, where she first fell in love with textiles over 30 years ago, Lisa drapes her prints across walls, ceilings, and furniture, creating her signature solid cocoon of pattern and color.
I shouldn't admit this, it was maybe it was a while ago. I'd had a nice lunch and I think I might have had overserved myself with the white wine, and I came out and there was this camel in the window. And I walked in and I said, I have to have it, and I got it. And it was the first thing I bought for my apartment in the first sale. This woman who became a friend of mine called Florida Brant, she made in her store on the 7th arrondissement in Paris. And we've been friends ever since.
She discovered the apartment in terrible condition during COVID, but its history and old world charm pulled her in. After a thoughtful restoration, it now reflects her love of global craftsmanship, Venetian glassware, and nostalgic details gathered from a life of travel.
And the picture is my love for India. A photographer called Karen Noor did a whole group of Indian, I think it's called Indian Song, and they have them at Danzig or Gallery. But this is a synagogue in Cochin that I actually went to visit. I loved it because it was colorful, but I also loved it because I actually was there.
Every inch of this Fifth Avenue jewel box tells a story, a mix of India, Paris, Hollywood glamour, and Lisa's unmistakable eye. To watch Lisa's full episode ad-free, scan the QR code on screen or click the join button below. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes, opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see, I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Lisa Fine. Please come in and welcome to my New York apartment. Hi, I'm Lisa Fine and welcome to my apartment in New York City. I'm a textile designer. I was a little late to start. I had worked in magazines and I went to India, 30-something years ago, and the first day I arrived, I really knew that my future was in textiles. Since then, it's been an up and down journey, but it's something I love, and I've traveled all over the world, and you can see textiles in almost everything I do. During COVID, when everyone was leaving New York, I finally said, now is the time that possibly I can get my dream apartment. And I looked and looked and looked. For some reason, this apartment had been on the market on and off for 5 years, and no one was buying in New York. One thing leads to another, and I ended up getting it and spent 2 years renovating it. And luckily, I had the most fantastic architect, J.P. Couture, who had worked in Newport, preserving and restoring historical houses, and then had a great friend, Tom Shear, who had done many apartments in this building and knew it well. And it was a really fun experience. And I know very few people here, renovation is fun, but luckily my contractor and my architect and I did not have one disagreement, and it was great the whole time. Although most of my textiles and my inspiration had been in India, having been at home for, a good part of a year in Dallas, I'd re-seen every old movie. And the 30s, 40s, the Thin Man, all these things, I was becoming very nostalgic and thinking how, oh, wouldn't it be great to just go back in time? And so when this building that was built in 1927 ended up being my apartment, that was my inspiration. And it was fun because I hadn't really looked in that direction in so long. I grew up in Mississippi, and we would go to New Orleans. That was the big city. I would come as a child with my parents to New York, and I don't know why, but I always have wanted to be in a big city. And I loved New York. The minute I arrived, I loved it. I've never wanted to leave. I mean, sure, I go spend a couple of years or longer in Paris or other places, and I go to India. But I think New York is the greatest city in the world. And that's why when people said they're leaving it, I was like convinced that I would never leave, and that's when I bought this apartment. Now we're in the living room. I love to go to visit English country houses or all over in the summer. And one thing I notice that whether it's a really grand estate or a very simple house, the English almost always have a big console with a bar. And I love to go around and look at the different condiments and what they do and how they stock them. So I was determined to do that here. It's funny, some of the bars that I love the most, you weren't allowed to take pictures, so I had to try to take a mental note, but they go as far as to have everything for the olives and the mixes, and whether you use it or not, which I rarely do because I usually go out, I love the way it looks. Someone asked me recently if I collected anything, and I said no, but then when I moved into this apartment, as I'm unpacking the boxes, I realized I must be collecting Italian glassware. I mean, I think every time I go to Italy, I come back with glasses. These being some of my favorite from Averbini in Venice. We don't fill them up, but I think they're really beautiful. And the picture is my love for India. A photographer called Karen Noor did a whole group of Indian, I think it's called Indian Song, and they have them at Danziger Gallery. But this is of a synagogue in Cochin that I actually went to visit. I loved it because it was colorful, but I also loved it because I actually was there. So it means a lot. This I found in a market in Burma. And, you know, as always, people go, you are not going to buy that and lug that all the way back to New York. But trust me, you get things out of the market, you bring them to your house, your apartment, and all of a sudden, you're so happy you did it because you would never find it. And if you did, you'd never be able to afford it. And this was just in some offbeat market in the middle of nowhere outside of Rangoon. And that was so long ago, and it's still here. I love two big matching chintz armchairs. And this is my fabric. It's one of my favorite fabrics. It's called Mirabelle, and it's of a document that I got, but I added the stripe. And so I love stripes, I love flowers, and whenever you can mix them together, it's my favorite combination. And so this are the two armchairs. And I had these red velvet banquettes in Paris. There's nothing I love more than a velvet banquette. And I'd seen a lot of interiors with the turquoise and the teal blue. It's not really green, it's not really blue. It was really difficult. And I was in a house in England that Colfax and Fowler did, and I asked for the paint color, and then I looked and I realized it wasn't one color, it was about 25 coats of paint. So I went to San Patrignano and said, I'm gonna make wallpaper that color because it'll be a lot less than having someone stay here for weeks, you know, doing it. It arrived and they put it up without me seeing it because I was in Texas. It was the most horrible color you've ever seen. It was so bright and so awful. And I sent Tom Shear over here and he said, yes, Lisa, it is that bad. And I said, well, fix it. He goes, I can't. I've got to get a jitney. And I flew from Dallas in August here at 6 a.m. in the morning and met another friend of mine, Richard Keith Langham, and spent all day trying to correct it and flew back to Dallas that night. And what they did is they painted another color over it and striated. I think we got it right, but to be honest with you, it depends on the light. This room gets so much light. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's still a little bright, but I'm basically happy with it. But, you know, another lesson, to be learned. And while I'm not a decorator, you have to oversee every step of the process. I just thought that they got it right, but it was terrible. But anyway, I love the mix of the red velvet and the turquoise, and I love the bar. Obviously, I love a good bar. I love dogs. I grew up with 5 dogs, and I was lucky enough to have an ex-boyfriend of mine who had all of my dogs' portraits painted. And here's Malula, and I have my other dog, Kashgar. Unfortunately, neither one of them are with us, and my current dog does not have a portrait, but it's not over yet. So that's center stage. These screens, they're leather painted screens, and I've had them, I bought them in Paris so long ago. And I had them over my house as one big screen in Paris, but here I broke them up and put on the sides. And I love anything that has an exotic oriental flair. And even though India is my inspiration, there's so many things with chinoiserie and China and everything, so I've always liked them. This is my entryway, and in keeping with the 1920s style, I really wanted to have it all mirrored, and I wanted black marble, so I did it. Charlotte Moss wrote this down when I told her. She goes, "I've got to write that quote down." I said, "Charlotte, I did it before I knew I couldn't afford it, because I knew if I waited till the end, I wouldn't have done it." And I have to say, I hope it does look like it's of the period. So these light fixtures, believe it or not, I bought those like 30 years ago in Paris for my mother's apartment in Florida for her, and they never got hung. For some reason, she didn't like them, and they've been in storage, and I think they were waiting to come here because they're kind of perfect. I think they're of the period. And these sconces, I think I bought those so long ago at Newell Gallery, and I love them because they're like little Moroccan boys, but they aren't Moroccan. I think they're French. As in everything, I love going to markets in Asia where I find all these like bamboo and lacquered bowls. And I love animals, as you see. You can't really see this very well, but these are all deer and animals. I love all of that. And what I'm going to show you, there are just so many different, you can go wild. And when I was there, I thought I bought so much, and now I'm thinking I didn't buy enough. But all different types of bamboo and lacquer, which is so wonderful. And I'm just going to show you this. But then there's Fergus Downey on Instagram, which I kind of lost my mind. He has beautiful old porcelain, and I particularly love this because I love the oranges and the magentas, which I love. And all this mixes. This was, a dessert set that was a lot of pieces, but people can't believe that I get something this nice and something from a market that's like, $2, but I love having it all together. And then my dear friends who I took to India with all got together, and behind my back, I think Lisa McCarthy of Everyday Elegance, who knew what I would love. She knew I loved pomegranates. So they gave me these, which I think are beautiful. And then another friend of mine, Georgia Spogley, knew that I'd gotten these. So she and Miguel Flores Viana said, okay, well then we need to give Lisa artichokes because she likes those too. So I'm just going around my apartment showing all these like generous, wonderful gifts I have from all these great friends. And then I recently had to give a lunch for the world monuments. This week was the big thing. And Posh, okay, I never do a table without my silver mint julep cups. I think it's kind of a Southern thing. Even though I didn't have mint juleps growing up as a child, I kind of like the idea and feel like I missed out on something that I never had a mint julep, so I made up for it with these cups. And I always have these filled with flowers for any lunch or dinner I do. And here's a portrait of my beloved rescue dog, Kashgar. They're also done by Joanne Doe. This chest, Jonathan Burden, who I love, and if you like, I love Anglo-Indian furniture, and he is the most charming, divine dealer, and he specializes in Anglo-Indian as well as other things. I have to have bookshelves everywhere, so what we did is I had my architect extend this out to create these bookshelves that we made. And I don't have that many shelves, but I brought some of my most favorite books, and they're all nonfiction. It's lots of biographies and books on spies, books on travel, but really, really mainly biographies, and a lot of World War II books. I think my Southern roots have a real impact on the fact that I tend to like things that are pretty and romantic. I think we've lived through ages, ups and downs, ons and off, where, you know, people want to be more cool and monochromatic and beige and gray and things like that. I've never went through that phase. I've always loved color. I've always loved flowers. I've always loved stripes. And I think that is a part of growing up in the South, but not necessarily my parents. What is interesting with my parents, or more my mother, is I did grow up with a lot of black lacquer furniture and black marble fireplace and things like that. So that probably influenced my love of black lacquer. Not that Francis Elkins and Art Deco bathrooms didn't, because I think they just sort of enhanced that sort of interest that I probably had subliminally from a childhood. Well, it's funny, people always ask me, oh, did your parents love interiors? Did they love decorating? And, you know, to be quite honest with you, no, not in the least. My father wouldn't have noticed what a room looked like if it blew up in front of him. He liked books, dogs, and golf. My mother could care less. All she cared about is what she wore. And she loved fashion, so maybe that sort of instilled a sense of design in me, because I spent most of my childhood watching her try on clothes, whether it be at home or in a dressing room. She did take painting, and I would take painting with her, and we would always go visit museums whenever we'd go to New Orleans or New York or any big city. We would always go to the museums. But my obsession for, you know, interiors is totally not from my parents. Now, I have heard that my grandmother loved gardening and china and silver and things like that, but she was long gone by the time I was there, as was most of the silver and the china, and the rose gardens were dead, and the azaleas were slowly going. So I don't know, but I've always loved design of all types. My tiny kitchen is actually quite big for the building, because I gave up a washing machine and dryer to actually have a full-size refrigerator, which is very unusual for this space. And I wanted a butler's pantry, not a kitchen. A butler's pantry with all the things that a kitchen has. So I found a picture of a 1930s butler's pantry in a Chicago apartment building, and my architect, J.P. Couture, was able to have it copied off-site and installed. But he copied it so well, he even did the latches like they would have. And the big challenge, though, was to have the stainless steel all the way across. And it was quite complicated, but we didn't give up, and it was actually the last addition in the apartment, because it looks real easy and simple, but as they say, what is simple is often the most difficult to achieve. Okay, and now my favorite thing to do is a bath at night before I go to bed. And I love a big bathroom, and I love big bathtubs, and it wasn't easy to create that in a tiny space, but I got rid of a lot of things. And one friend, who I respect her taste more than anything in the world, walked in and said, "Why do you have a bathtub in your entrance hall?" Well, I don't look at it that way. It's just an extension of my bedroom off my entrance hall. I lived off and on in Paris for quite some time, and the first time I went to stay at a friend's house, I woke up and everything in the bedroom was all one fabric. The walls, the ceiling, the bed, everything. And I couldn't understand why I slept so well. Maybe it was just that night, I don't know. But I said after that, I will always, if I'm able, have my fabrics or some fabric all over a bedroom, one print everywhere. And you know, you look, there are a lot of people that do that, and you see it more in Europe than you see it in the United States, even though I think it's becoming more of a trend here. But there's something very cocoon-like about being enveloped in one pretty print. And a lot of my friends walk into this particular bedroom and like, oh, I like it, but I would have nightmares if I slept in that room. How could you sleep in all this? But I promise you, it becomes a solid. And that's not just because I want to sell a lot of textiles, and which people say I tell them that just so they'll do it. But no, it really is something very nurturing to just see one pretty print everywhere. Okay, this bedroom is in my Charlotte fabric. Well, I have two Charlottes. The Charlotte who runs my business, and Charlotte, my friend DeCarcacci in London, who has wisteria all over her house. And I thought of both of them when I did this. And I love, you know, lilac. So I actually think this is probably a more peaceful bedroom than mine. But the other one is more fitting to my personality, probably. So I wanted to definitely have twin beds, and I had to argue with so many friends, and everyone thought I was crazy. No one does twin beds anymore, but I specifically wanted people to come with their children, their grandchildren, two friends that might not want to share a bed. And I had seen some beds in an old magazine, and I couldn't find them anywhere. So I had Jose Quintano copy them perfectly for me, and I love them. And then my great friend Jane Scott Hodges at Leontine Linens had the perfect lavender silk comforter. And I feel like this room actually captures the 1930s more than any room, because they actually did have twin beds and they did have silk comforters. And then I wanted the white piquet, which is also Jane Scott did. And I had a bunch of things in storage. And I think that this bedside table was Dorothy Draper for Kendall Furniture. And it was really not very interesting, but I took a picture of some Colfax and Fowler tables and gave it to my painter. And I said, can't you just make this piece of furniture look like it was Colfax and Fowler? And I think he did a pretty good job. And then we changed the knobs. And dogs, once again, I love poodles. I have that. And these are astrological pictures. Unfortunately, I only have half the horoscope. What I love most is everyone says, you know, brown furniture's out of fashion. So I had the best time looking for furniture because no one wanted a lot of it. Jonathan Burden, who I had found some things from, came to do a lot of restoration for me. And he was fixing the latch here, and he opened this up, and I found this in an auction house in Chicago, and he was like, I can't believe this. This is Gillows from Lancashire, which was a very fine cabinet maker, but it never been marked as that. It's what you call a debtor's desk, I think, and they have, look, they have all the inlaid wood for the alphabet for the files. It was all the debts. It's called a debtor's desk, and it went totally unmarked, which I was very lucky because I had no idea. I was just trying to fill the wall with brown furniture that fit scale. I love books. That's actually what I collect. I buy books of all kinds. I love books that I read, and I love old books. I love particularly travel books, memoirs, biographies. I don't read much fiction, but here is Vita Sackville-West's Passage to Tehran, and here is Curzon's Travels of a Superior Person. This is about Egypt. This is about Tehran, and I love, love, love anything about travel, any sort of memoir, and I love nostalgia, you know, sort of old-fashioned things. And it's funny is I have the books that I read that are more current in my bookshelves in the hall, and I have more of my old books and memoirs and travel books because so many of my friends that stay here feel the same way I do. So it's more books that they would be interested in. I recently discovered a new florist, and it's not a shop, and you go, I think it's on 82nd Street, and it's the bottom of a townhouse, and it's called Posh. And I'd seen her flowers somewhere. I asked, I went to meet her, and so I had to have flowers for this and flowers for a luncheon I did, and so if anyone's looking for flowers in New York, go to Posh, and they're wonderful to work with. I love print of any kind, and I love wall-to-wall carpet in bedrooms just because it's comfortable. I have a great friend in England, Charlotte DeCarcacci, who I call her to bounce ideas back and forth with. And we were talking about carpet, and she goes, I hate any carpet that matches. And I thought, that's interesting. And then I called Tom Shear, who I ask a lot of questions about, and he said, Lisa, you need to just do leopard. Well, he gave me this leopard source, and I thought, okay, great, and I love it. But I didn't want to do exactly the same leopard in both bedrooms, but I wanted there to be a continuity. I want it to be the same but slightly different. So that's when I went to Star Carpet, and I got the leopard with the roses. I think that in an apartment this size, it's nice to have continuity. And I didn't want it the same, but I wanted it reminiscent or more reflective of each other. When I was working at Mirabella magazine, I worked for an architect named James Sharon, and he was from Chicago. And he would talk about Francis Elkins and David Adler all the time. In fact, he's the one that actually found the mirrored bathroom that most of us have seen in Miles Redd's townhouse. So I've always loved that, and I've always credited James for, introducing me to that style. But then again, during COVID, I resaw all the Thin Man and all these sort of 1930s interiors. And when I saw that this apartment was built in 1927 and it wasn't so big, I mean, it was small, I said, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to sort of experiment with that and recreate it. And I tried to be very true to the 1927 integrity and style, and at the same time incorporate my favorite person of that period is Francis Elkins and David Adler. What can I say? J.P. Couture gets all the credit for working so hard to create this. I was looking for an old tub, and I wanted to get an big, old-fashioned tub, and I probably spent 6 to 8 months finding one. I couldn't find it, and then when we found it, it didn't fit in. It wasn't big enough. The space wasn't big enough, and finally he called me and said, Lisa, I'm doing an intervention. If you don't come with me to Waterworks and pick a tub, I can't do your apartment. It is delaying the entire renovation, and we can't even get the permits until you pick the tub. So anyway, I got the tub at Waterworks, and not that I wouldn't have loved a big old tub, but I'm happy. I love the way it looks, and the idea was to create a bedroom, bathroom, dressing room, toilet, do it all in one area. And so I can close that door, and whoever's staying with me can do whatever they want because I have my whole little area here. Okay, this also came from Jonathan Brown. I love him. I wanted everything in his store. I was gonna have a built-in mirrored vanity, like you see that, in all the 30s and Francis Elkins did. And they were so crazy expensive that I found this like 18th century desk for a third the price of Jonathan Burton. And I actually like it more. It seemed like it was meant to be here. It fit perfectly. Honestly, I did this thinking I could have an old-fashioned vanity and sit like a lady and get ready and do my makeup, but I still do it on the run. I'm still standing up and grabbing this and off I go. I like the idea. In theory, I haven't used it as much, but it does look pretty. I got this at an auction at Stair Gallery for nothing. I wanted it even though it's too big for the space, but no one wants brown furniture. And it's a really nice piece, so I was thrilled. My initial inspiration, definitely for my textile collection, came from India. But after a while, I just thought I had to look other places because so many other people were also inspired by India. And then it came very easy because my favorite thing to do really is in the summer is go visit English country houses and look at their architecture, their furniture, their fabrics. And during COVID, when I also didn't see for the first time so many of the classics and period pieces, I became more interested in reviving old archival chintzes and floral prints and things like that. But what I've loved about it is I've integrated them with my fabrics from India. And it's not anything new, but it's my interpretation of it. And that's what I love, because I can take my original inspiration from India, Turkey, the Middle East, you know, all these places where they have amazing geometrics and things that I normally wouldn't be attracted to. But when I mix them with old-fashioned floral chintzes from France or England or India, from Tree of Life from India and the chintzes from India, it creates a whole nother look for me in my collection. Well, this is my bedroom, which is my favorite room always, because I do everything in my bedroom, from work on my fabrics to pay bills to talk on the phone, and my bathtub is near. I just created a whole little bedroom suite, like I would never have to leave if I didn't have to. And as I said, I love a bedroom that's all one fabric, and it usually has pink in it. And unlike most of my bedrooms, I didn't do florals, but I wanted to do these leaves, and it's everywhere. Some people find it busy, but to me, it reads like a solid. And in my bedroom are all my personal favorite things. That most of them are gifts from friends. And one of them is a collage that a great friend of mine, Jean-Charles de Ravenel, who makes these amazing collages. And I wanted to do a collage with all of my trips to India, everything I love, and my favorite soap, which is Kama, another friend of mine, and you know, my favorite teas, all these wonderful masala teas that are delicious. And obviously, you can't do anything with India without jewelry and spas. I've gone to spas all over India with my mother, so there are pictures there. And, you know, locals and architecture. And he really captured it. But what was really funny is he called me and he said, "But Lisa, there's nothing about you." And I said, "I don't want anything about me. Please, I want it to be about India." So when it arrived, there are all these pictures of me. He'd gotten on the internet and found old magazine articles of me, and I have to admit, I actually really liked it. I wouldn't have done it, but I'm glad he did. And then my desk is just all things people have given me. My dear friends, Jamie and Krill and Marco, Krill and Gal, they know I love camels, so that's a camel inkwell, which I don't use as an inkwell. That's a sea urchin pencil holder, all from Krill and Gal. And then Peter Prenoyer, the architect, sent me this fabulous clock that he custom made. And then my great friends for my, I won't say which birthday, but it was a big, big birthday. Bettina Zilka and Alex Hitz, they found in silver box for me in London. And my obsession, I'm so happy in my apartment, and I don't think I'll ever get to build my dream house. I'm gonna have to be happy here, but I love Lutyens. And so New Delhi is one of my absolute favorite cities in the world. And this was something I've got at auction at Doyle, and it's of a Lutyens bungalow. And then I love British colonial, and this is a company school painting from Calcutta, which I bought that for myself on a big birthday. And I'm glad I did, because they're really hard to come by. And I have another friend, my friend Jack Swain, knows that I love Bernard Boutet de Monvel. And he had a big auction in Paris several years ago, and he got me these drawings. And this is of a camel, which I love camels, as I recently said. And these are heaven and hell, which they aren't to everyone's taste, but I kind of think they're wonderful, hell and heaven. And I think the pink flowers sort of soften up the devil there. When I'm in India, I love just buying simple, naive art or any kind of art, because it's everywhere. And these are pictures of elephants. And apparently there was an elephant competition where all these art students were told to paint the same elephant. And there are hundreds of these, and these are just 4 of them. And I had been to a friend of mine's house recently who had a whole wall of them that they'd gotten at, I think, at Stair at the Whitney sale. But I love those. When I'm working with my textiles, I get sent lots of samples and strike-offs, and I need a lot of light. And there's no better place than in this little canopy by the window. So the bedroom is my favorite room, and it also has the best light and is the most comfortable small place to sit. So I often sit by the window and go through my samples. And as you can see, everything kind of blends together. As I was saying earlier, I was mixing, archival chintzes and florals with Egyptian, sort of geometrics. And you can see here, and one of my favorite things besides camels are pomegranates. So what's great fun about my fabrics is everything I love, I find some way to reinterpret it. And here's sort of a play on an evil eye. And so I did these in all different colors to go. Evil eye with a woven chevron print. And I mix it with these old-fashioned archival prints that I love playing with. I never get tired of floral prints, but I'm trying to do more wovens now. In doing my textiles, I look at lots of archival things, and I love them, and I want to copy them. Like, for example, this is something I saw that I wanted to bring back because, I love pink and red and yellow together, and it's beautiful flowers. And then this, I love leaves and coral and green. But for the most part, I love camels. I don't have a camel fabric, but I have a batik that has lots of animals in it. And I love stripes, any kind of stripe, but a chevron stripe, especially a woven, is just a little more interesting than your regular stripe, and it's more durable than just a cotton print. So I'm doing those. And one of my other favorite things are pomegranate motifs. So I found this wonderful old fabric that's, you can't really tell it's a pomegranate that well, but if you look, yes, you can. And I love the way it mixes with the chevron. Even though it's all inspiration from, Turkey and the Middle East, it could be anywhere. It could be in New York, it could be in Palm Beach, it could be anywhere. And it's fun to mix all of these. As I said earlier, the minute I arrived in India and I sort of got over the shock of it and I went out into the streets and went to the markets, I knew I wanted to work in textiles. And every day I was there, I saw more things that inspired me. It took me a while to actually begin my collection, but in the first collection, which started approximately maybe 20 years ago, and the best-selling fabric, one of them to this day, was just of a single poppy that had been painted on a palace wall. And I took a picture of it, and I took it to Lisa Miller, an artist in Los Angeles, and I said, can you put that in repeat? And she did, and we named it Samode because it came from Samode Palace. And to this day, I have it in fabric in like 10 colors. I do it in wallpaper with paper. I do it in wallpaper with grass cloth. And Tom Shear orders it all the time. Everyone I don't even know orders it. And it just goes to show you when you find something that people love, it's classic, it never goes out of style. And it's very simple, but it's also romantic in the way it is a flower and it's a repeat. Well, as I said earlier, I love camels, and my first camel to actually buy was the first thing I bought for my apartment in Paris. And I shouldn't admit this, it was a while ago. I'd had a nice lunch, and I think I might have had overserved myself with the white wine, and I came out, and there was this camel in the window. And I walked in, and I said, I have to have it, and I got it. And the irony is, it was the first day that this woman who became a friend of mine called Florida Brant, who had an antique store there, and I think I don't know if she still has an antique store, but anyway, she's a great dealer in antiques. And it was the first thing I bought for my apartment in the first sale she made in her store on the 7th arrondissement in Paris. And we've been friends ever since. I don't see her very often, and I keep up with her. But so that's the camel story. And I want to show you this book here because travel has been such an integral part of my journey, my inspiration, everything. And I first started exotic travel with the World Monuments Fund. And I just received this book 2 days ago at their big summit. And it's out this year, and it has so many amazing monuments all over the world. And usually in countries with great markets, great textiles, great arts and crafts. And I guess my textile collection is really a result of all that. Well, my bed might seem very boring and simple, but it didn't start out simple. I wanted to copy the original bed that they had at the Coates Reed House in Chicago that Francis Elkins and David Adler did. I had it made in India. It arrived, and I had all bed and no room. And I tried to talk myself into liking it, and it just, there's no way. Luckily, I ended up selling it to a friend of mine's daughter, and when I got my second bed, I said, I no longer want a California king. I don't want a king. I want a bed like is it a 1950s hotel in Europe. Low, small, and now I have this simple bed, and it actually is perfect for the room, and I love it. But I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make, and one reason why I'm not a decorator, is because often what you love doesn't fit in the room, in the location, or anything. And one thing I had to learn the hard way is you have to let your proportions and your location speak to you, not get the bed that you've always wanted. The bedroom is always my favorite room because I feel free to make it as girly and feminine as I want, as comfortable as I want, and I just do everything from it, like as I said, and it's comfortable. I can be here forever. One of the things I love most about New York are the people, obviously. I have friends from all over the world, all ages, all interests, industries, and New York is the one city that if you love people and you love, going out, you can go to dinner and be with a different group every night, or you can mix 5 different groups at a dinner. And I think that's a rare quality in a city, and I love that. And I love walking through Central Park more than anything. I mean, when I lived in Paris, I walked all over, but it's a walking city, and what can I say? I've been here most of my adult life. I've lived in Paris, I've traveled all over the world, and I got this apartment here hoping I will go out feet first. Well, home is a sentiment, okay? A lot of people misuse that word. And if I had to say home, to me, it's where I feel comfortable, where I can stay in bed all day and read a book, have my dogs, watch a movie, eat some delicious food. Home to me is familiar and it's warm. And it's being with the people I love, doing what I love to do when I'm not out and about.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.